Hi everyone, thank you for joining us tonight for this first webinar in the Fertility Network 2019 Trying to Conceive series. We are the charity that provides advice, support, help and understanding to anyone with fertility issues. My name is Heather Weffin and I'm delighted tonight to be joined by Isabel Traynor. Hi Isabel.
Hi everybody.
Now, Isabel is currently the lead nurse for gynecology and assisted conception for NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde, and is going to share her wealth of experience and knowledge from her 25 years working in the field of assisted conception. Now, the first part of this webinar tonight will be Isabel's presentation, Going to the Clinic, What Happens Next. Now, I'm sure as you listen, you will have many questions to ask, so please type them in as you think of them, and we will come back to them for a short Q&A session as the second part of our session. All you have to do if you want to ask a question is just hover your cursor down at the bottom of your screen, and you should see a Q&A function box appear. Now, if you click on that, you can type in your questions there, but please make sure that you select the anonymous function, just so that we make sure no data or sensitive names, etc. I'll say that again. No sensitive data like your names appear on the recording, because this session will be recorded tonight and we don't want the disclosure of any personal details. Now, Isabel, I think we're just about ready to hand over to you. So we'll just share Isabel's screen and then she'll be ready to begin.
Thank you. Hi everybody. I'm delighted to be here to give just a brief overview of a patient's journey from primary care, so from the GP through to your secondary infertility clinics, and then through to tertiary care where patients receive assisted conception treatment. It is a whirlwind tour. So people's journey will vary greatly, but hopefully the principles and investigations that people embark on or have will be very similar. I am part of the Scottish National Fertility Group that was convened in 2010 to look at providing equitable services for assisted conception across Scotland. Excuse me. At that time there was huge variations on waiting times, access to treatment, criteria for treatment, and the Scottish Government wanted to make this equitable regardless of where you stayed in Scotland, so reducing the postcode lottery. But also as part of that we wanted to streamline the patient journey, so because what we found was that patients had duplication of investigation throughout their journey. So investigations that they had at their GP were then repeated at their local fertility clinic and then repeated at a tertiary centre. So we developed a patient pathway and we've shared that with GPs and clinicians throughout Scotland, and hopefully that will have reduced duplication. But what I wanted to do today was just look at the key areas that we would look at each stage of your fertility journey. So the first stage is attending your GP, and the time frame that people attend their GP varies greatly, but we would suggest that if you had been trying for at least a year, you might want to then make an appointment with your GP. He or she may reassure you to try for another 2 years, for another year, so that you've been trying for 2 years before they start investigations. But depending on personal circumstances, the GP might expedite some investigations depending on menstrual cycles, patient history, etc. So if by the time you get to the GP for ladies, the things that we should be looking at are checking your menstrual cycle. Do you have a regular menstrual cycle, or do you have short or long periods which might affect your ovulation? We generally do a day 21 progesterone at this point just to confirm ovulation, If you've got a longer cycle, that might be on day 24 or day 28. The GP may or should perform a vaginal examination just to make sure that anatomy is all in the right place, and may do some swabs for some STDs, just to outrule any history of that. From a public health point of view, we would encourage GPs to perform a cervical smear test, and also check rubella, although that is varying throughout Scotland now because of the immunisation and vaccination programme in the UK. We are looking at stopping screening for rubella, but currently at the City Conception Clinic we are still making sure that patients have had their vaccinations before starting treatment. The GP may also check your hormone profile to see what your estrogen and progesterone are doing, how your FSH is, or your follicle stimulation hormone. And as I said, we normally check a day 21 progesterone just to confirm ovulation. If this is all fine, then we would ask if you have a male partner, for your male partner to attend his GP, which may or may not be the same GP practice as you have. And we would expect the GP to perform a physical examination, again just to make sure anatomically everything is where it should be. They may or may not do penile swabs. We tend to see that GPs do vaginal swabs in women to check for chlamydia, but don't do so for men, and there's just as high a chance of men having an STD as the female population. We would also encourage the GP to send or to ask the men to submit a semen sample for analysis. I've put double check it and do another one because we do tend to repeat semen analysis maybe 2 or 3 times. There is a natural variation in sperm counts, and we just want to double check that they're within the normal limits. So if everything from a physical and sexual health point of view is okay, then we should really be looking at lifestyle issues, which I think do affect fertility hugely. We should be focusing on diet. We need to make sure that couples have a good balanced diet, and that they are having all food groups. I think that's really important in maximising your chances of having good eggs and sperm quality from a physical point of view. No, there's very little evidence to support that, but we know that diet has an impact on fertility outcomes, and I think that it should be a focus for us. I think the other things that are just very standard. We should all be having some exercise 2 to 3 times a week, and it doesn't need to be an hour in the gym. Even just walking, any kind of physical exercise that increases your heart rate should be encouraged. Alcohol consumption, we should not be having any alcohol while we're trying to conceive. Again, there's the evidence is small, but the government's recommendations that whilst trying to conceive or during pregnancy, we should not be consuming any alcohol. So we would suggest or recommend that you abstain from alcohol. Smoking, we do know, has a negative impact on fertility and quality of eggs and sperm. So we would strongly recommend that you try, and if you do smoke, access to smoking cessation services, which are free to all patients in Scotland, and you can access them through your GP, your local chemist, etc. BMI is really important as well. We should try and aim for a BMI within 18.5 and 25 with a maximum of 30. Again, that's because it has for females in particular, it has an impact on the quality of eggs that are produced. I've put caffeine intakes because for a while we were recommending reducing caffeine intake. It's difficult to quantify how many cups of coffee you have because the amount of caffeine varies so much, but we would try and suggest that you should maybe limit it to maybe 2 cups of coffee a day, not large Americanos from the coffee shops on your way to work, because they have huge caffeine intakes, but just 2 ordinary cups at home. I put tight underwear particularly for men, because one of the things that we do know is that anything that heats up the testes is not good for sperm quality and sperm count. So when we're counselling men about improving sperm quality, we suggest that they try and avoid anything that heats up their testes. So, for example, particularly hot baths, saunas, really tight underwear, etc. So that's all general health and lifestyle issues that you should consider when you're trying to conceive. So if they're okay, or even if we've identified some issues, the next stage would be for your GP to refer you to your local infertility clinic. I've just put some pictures up here just to make it a bit more interesting. At your infertility clinic, the clinician that sees you, the nurse that sees you, should take an extensive medical history to make sure that there's nothing in your past medical history that could be interfering with your ability to conceive. As I said before, we are trying to streamline the patient journey and make investigations that are taken in primary care accessible in secondary care, so to avoid repeating these. But if they're not, then it might be necessary to repeat some of the blood tests, swabs or semen samples at your infertility clinic, depending on what area you live in. From the female's point of view, we would do a pelvic ultrasound, again just to check anatomically that the womb and ovaries are in the right place and that they don't have any cysts or fibroids. We would also consider doing a tubal patency test to make sure that the fallopian tubes are patent, to allow, if we know that you are ovulating and we know that your partner has sperm, we need to make sure that the canal that they meet in is open. And we can do that in a variety of ways. So we can do an X-ray in contrast, which is called a hysterosalpingogram. We can do a laparoscopy and dye, and we can do a HORMONE, which is an ultrasound with some contrast medium that you can see pass through the fallopian tubes by scan. I've just put some pictures here of what you might see by ultrasound, and these are ovaries that classically we would call polycystic ovaries, because you can see tiny follicles all around the exterior of the ovary. That doesn't mean that women have polycystic ovarian syndrome. This is just a description of an ovary and might be a symptom of polycystic ovarian syndrome. But we can look at that a bit later on. The other things that you might see with a laparoscopy is endometriosis, and you can see it's almost like some grapes at the bottom of that picture. So they are endometriomas, or endometriotic cysts that you can see by laparoscopy in the pelvis. This is a huge fibroid, and this is just for sensationalism rather than from any real general. This is not what we would see on scan, and it was just a pretty impressive fibroid. But you can see some small fibroids in the womb and or on the muscle of the womb that, if it's impinging in the endometrium, might in fact impact an implantation. So we do look at scan and tubal patency testing in a whole, and really what we're trying to look at is a picture. So it's a bit like getting a jigsaw and putting a picture together to see if there's anything that's might be impacting in your infertility or your fertility. One of the other areas that you may have checked at the secondary infertility clinic is an anti-Mullerian hormone. This is a hormone that we can measure that has a prediction, is a predictor of your ovarian reserve. The advantage of doing that is that it's stable through your menstrual cycle, whereas other hormones we have to take at specific times in your menstrual cycle. And depending on what the result of that your anti-Mullerian hormone, that may influence your management plan. So it may expedite your referral to tertiary care, or may reassure you that your ovarian reserve is fine for your age range, and that you should continue to try and conceive naturally. This is just a graph that shows that anti-Mullerian hormone declines with age, and that's obviously consistent with fertility. I put some reference ranges. We would suggest that a low ovarian reserve is probably less than 5 or 6 picomoles. A good ovarian reserve 5 to 15 picomoles, and a high ovarian reserve greater than 15 picomoles per litre. But we need to take into consideration women's age. The two things that affect female fertility the most are age and AMH, and unfortunately it's the two things that we can do very little or nothing about. So if you are then have completed all the investigations in secondary care, then we need to look at patients' eligibility for NHS funded treatment. We, as part of the National Fertility Group, looked at the optimal access criteria, and we have taken into consideration patients' age. So in Scotland, you can access fertility treatment up until the age of 42. You can have one cycle of treatment between 40 and 42, and you can access up to 3 cycles of treatment before the age of 40. That doesn't necessarily mean that everybody will be eligible for 3. It is very much dependent on clinical outcomes and the prediction of pregnancy. We have also a BMI criteria. Patients must be non-smoking for at least 3 months before they're placed on the waiting list for treatment. Couples should have no alcohol during their treatment. They should also be in a stable relationship for more than 2 years and be living together for at least 2 years before they can access treatment. It used to be that you weren't able to access treatment if you had a child in home, but we changed that to having no genetic children in the home together. No previous sterilisation, and without stating obvious, no indulging in any illegal substances. So these are the main criteria that you have to meet before you would be eligible for consideration to referral to a tertiary centre for NHS funded treatment. If you are eligible for treatment in Scotland, there are 4 centres in Aberdeen, Dundee, Edinburgh and Glasgow, which all provide NHS funded treatment. But if you're not eligible for NHS funded treatment and you're able to self-fund privately in Scotland, all those clinics have self-funding treatments, and also there's the Glasgow Centre for Reproductive Medicine that provides privately funded private treatment. So it's just to make you aware of where the centres are throughout Scotland. When you're referred to the tertiary clinic, you will be seen by either a specialist nurse or a clinician who will again review your past medical history, review your previous investigations. They may repeat an ultrasound, and they will discuss your treatment options and confirm a treatment plan specific to you. You would then be placed on the waiting list for treatment, and we would then, once you reach the top of the waiting list, which is currently sitting around the 6-month mark from being placed on the waiting list to getting your first appointment, which we call a screening appointment. At this appointment, you're invited to the clinic, and we would review or repeat your AMH, because that will determine your treatment plan and your treatment regime. We would perform some vaginal swabs, and we would give you your HFE consents to review and peruse. And there are some ethical issues that you have to discuss with your partner regarding using eggs and sperm for treatment and creating embryos and embryo storage. This screening appointment, this is treatment plans specific to Glasgow Royal Infirmary, but as I said, there might be slight variations throughout the country, but they should follow a similar pathway. We would then confirm your next appointment, where you come to complete to review your treatment regime and can complete your necessary consent forms. All assisted conception services have access to counselling services, and these are fertility counsellors who have got a wealth of experience and knowledge in fertility treatments. And I think that when couples are having fertility treatment, it's easy to have the physical side. Well, it's not easy, but physically patients can have treatment after treatment, but it is a huge emotional and psychological roller coaster for them, and I think that counselling services are just as important to access as coming for bloods and scans, etc. So we would encourage couples to access that, but it is very much a voluntary service, in as much as you would self-refer yourself to the counsellor, and generally in the clinics we don't know whether you access the counselling because it is very confidential, but it is available to anybody having fertility treatment in any of the centres in Scotland and in the UK. We would review your individual treatment regime. I've specifically looked at IVF, but in secondary centres and in tertiary centres, couples can access ovulation induction and IUI and a whole variety of treatments. But just for the purposes of tonight, I thought we could maybe just look at an IVF treatment, and it's really just a whirlwind tour of that. At your screening appointment, you should have a treatment plan given to you, and your nurse or clinician should talk you step by step through that individual treatment plan. For many patients, they would have a long course treatment plan where we would have D21 down regulation, so we switch off your own hormones so that we've got control by giving you stimulation injections. So you have this injection on D21, and then around 2 weeks later you attend for your new start appointment. We do blood tests to check that you are down regulated, and a scan to make sure that your ovaries are quiet and you don't have any cysts, etc. And then we talk you through daily injections. Women tend to have injections for anything up to 2 weeks, and we scan you regularly during this time. It is really, really important that you follow the treatment regime. We would provide you in Glasgow, we provide you with the medicines, but in some centres you have to go to your GP, your local pharmacist and collect your prescription. But it's really important that you stick to that regime, and you don't swap or change any of the medicines for any other injections. The stimulation injections are very similar, but the ones that have been prescribed to you are specific for your treatment, and it's really important that you follow that regime. As I say, we do scan you regularly through those up to those 2 weeks until your follicles reach the optimum size, and then we give you a trigger or a booster injection and confirm your egg retrieval day. In most clinics this is like a day case procedure, so you do need to fast from midnight, you need to have somebody collect you, you shouldn't drive for 24 hours, etc. So anything that you would generally have to comply with in a day case surgical procedure, we would suggest that you should adhere to as part of your egg collection day. And this is just a sample of a theatre. We in Glasgow Royal Infirmary have an anaesthetist who sedates the patient. You have some scrub nurses, and you have a clinician performing the egg retrieval So that's just, it can be quite daunting for patients to go into theatre, and it was just to give a kind of idea of what to expect. This is the recovery area that you would be in for a couple of hours or an hour or so after your egg retrieval, just to make sure that you're well, you have something to eat and drink, and we monitor your blood pressure and pulse and regularly during this time. As I said, that on your theatre day you should comply with day case procedures. Following your theatre day, one of our embryologists would contact you the next day to check your fertilisation rates. At your theatre day, we would confirm how many eggs we collected. The following day, we confirm how many are fertilised. Your fertilised embryos are placed in an embryoscope, and the embryoscope's a special incubator that takes a picture of your embryos developing every 10 minutes. So effectively, the embryologists review a video of each embryo developing, and that allows them to select the best embryo for transfer. Your embryos should reach certain stages and certain timeframes, and if they do so, and we can monitor that through your videos, then we're pretty confident that we can select a good quality embryo to replace. If, for example, we aim in Glasgow Royal Infirmary for a day 5 blastocyst transfer because the pregnancy rates are improved by this embryo transfer stage. If, for example, you had 5 good quality embryos on day 5, we would generally replace 1 embryo and freeze the remaining 4. So if you have a fresh transfer and have a successful pregnancy, you can come back in years to come and have frozen embryo transfer, albeit you would have to self-fund to have that embryo transferred. But if your fresh transfer wasn't successful, you could use your frozen embryos and frozen embryo transfer before you started your next cycle of treatment and your stimulation injections, etc. So fresh and frozen embryos are considered one treatment cycle, and you would only have to self-fund if you achieved a live birth at any stage during that treatment cycle. Following your embryo transfer, and patients say this generally the most challenging time for you is the wait to pregnancy test, which tends to be around 9-10 days following your embryo transfer. We give you luteal support, so to make sure your endometrium or the lining of your womb stays thick and gives the embryo a chance to implant. You take some luteal support, and that might be vaginal pessaries or injections, and we give you a pregnancy test date. Historically, we used to ask patients to come in and have a blood test, but from patient feedback, we've changed that in the past few years to doing a urinary pregnancy test, as you would if you conceive naturally, and it makes the patient's feedback that it makes the experience a bit more normal. So we ask patients to do a pregnancy test and then contact the clinic with the result. If you have a positive pregnancy test, we arrange an early pregnancy scan to make sure that the pregnancy is in the right place and developing as normal. If you have a negative pregnancy test, we then have a multidisciplinary review group on a weekly basis, where we have clinicians, nurses, embryologists review each treatment cycle and make recommendations for further treatment. At this point, if you've had a negative pregnancy test and you want a return outpatient appointment to discuss future treatment with a clinician, then we can arrange that for you at this stage as well. This is the motley crew at the Glasgow Royal Infirmary team. We have expanded. We opened a new unit a few years ago, and we've literally doubled in size and doubled the number of treatment cycles that we perform. but consequently we have also seen a significant rise in pregnancy results, which has been terrific. So we at Glasgow Royal Infirmary are seeing more patients having first treatment cycles, and that has reduced the waiting times for treatment. And I think we've seen that across Scotland. The Scottish Government have invested, I think maybe between £9 and £10 million in treatments, but also in equipment for the laboratories, and that has had a significant impact in success rates. So I think that's maybe me spoke enough. I hope you found that useful. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. If anybody has anything that they would like me to answer, please feel free. I think Heather's going to come back in and field some questions.
Hi there everyone. I think you will agree that it's fantastic to have such an expert in the field here tonight to explain what would happen when we go to a fertility clinic. So thank you very much for that, Isabel. I'm just going to move the slides away. Okay, we've got a few questions on there, but before we have a look at the questions I can see there was one that was sent to us in advance, and that one is, and it's a $1 million question here, Isabel. For a person with a low ovarian reserve at age 37 and preparing for the very first IVF cycle, what would you recommend for improving that egg quality?
That is a very good question, and we are asked that regularly. I think there's not any $1 million answer to that question. I think lifestyle, it does have an impact. So I think diet, exercise, not smoking, reducing alcohol is practically as much as you can do to improve your general health. But also with that, we would hope that that would improve or have an impact in egg quality. I think fertility treatment is very fashionable. There's 1 year we're recommending, for example, drink pineapple juice, and that improves your pregnancy rates. The next year it's nuts, and the next year it's something else. But because we don't have any evidence and there's no research behind that, we can't really recommend anything apart from diet and lifestyle. There's certainly not any medications that you can take that improves egg quantity or quality. There has been some in the past, some small or some research studies to suggest that some medicines that are not licensed in the UK have an impact, but there certainly isn't enough evidence for clinics to recommend that use.
Okay, thank you for that. That's a very comprehensive answer there. Okay, let's have a look at what we've got on here then. Okay. Can women with EGFR 32% and proteinuria receive IVF treatment? Now you're going to know what that is more than I am.
I think that each individual has to have a clinical review by a clinician, and their medical condition should be reviewed. And not everybody's entitled to IVF treatment, and I think with all medicine, it's got to do no harm. So I can't comment on that specifically, because every individual's medical history needs to be reviewed independently. So I'm sorry, I don't have a definitive answer for you, but I think, as I say, I think that would be a clinical judgment and not just a generic yes or no.
Okay. How much do self-funded treatments cost? And again, I think you might find that one difficult to answer as well.
I think it does. I mean, I can only speak from my experience at Glasgow Royal Infirmary. I think for an IVF treatment cycle, it's around £5,500, but that will vary from clinic to clinic. We, as part of the Scottish Fertility Group, are looking at, we're working with Glasgow University, looking at almost having a national tariff. So how much do we think an NHS funded treatment would cost, and then you can relate that to private cycles. But there's such huge variations across the services. Not necessarily in relation to a specific IVF treatment, but in specifically looking at some clinics have secondary clinics within their own clinics, and that reviews or adjusts the costs for the service. So we have, as I say, we are working with Glasgow University, and we are creating a patient pathway, looking at number of blood tests, number of scans, the costs for egg collection, embryology, etc., to see if we can agree a national tariff. But if you are self-funding a treatment cycle, there's huge variations across the UK, and indeed we were at a meeting recently with the HFEA where it was reported that a patient had paid in excess of £20,000 for one treatment cycle. So as I say, you can see from between £5,000 and £20,000. I think £20,000 is extreme, but that was reported to the HFEA.
Okay, and quite often the clinics now offer add-ons, etc., don't they? Especially private clinics that a lot of patients pay for, and the HFEA have issued a joint statement that Fertility Network were involved in, and there is actually a traffic light system to which these add-ons are graded. I believe it's red for there's absolutely no evidence of them. I think it's amber for there might be some evidence that they actually work, and green says that there is actually randomised evidence from more than one study that says that add-on would be effective. Now, at the moment, I do believe that the HFEA haven't graded any of these add-ons green, have they? They're all amber or red, which means that the HFEA don't feel that there is sufficient evidence to say that they definitely improve the chances of conception when you're going through IVF.
I do think that if there was large multidisciplinary, multi-randomised controlled trials that showed that there was anything that would improve pregnancy rates, that as a service that wouldn't be an add-on. We would be looking to adopt that into our routine treatment cycles.
Okay, let's just have a look. Okay, I've never managed to fall pregnant naturally. Are my rates of success with IVF lower than those who have been pregnant before?
When we look at pregnancy rates, and the HFEA present pregnancy rates and clinics, we don't actually separate them into women who have conceived before or not. There are algorithms that you can access online. I don't have the specifics, but I could find out where you input your personal details, and that includes age, any previous pregnancies, etc., and that will give you an individualised pregnancy potential or pregnancy success rates. There is a suggestion that if you've conceived before, that you may have slightly elevated increase in pregnancy rates, but if you go into these pregnancy rate calculators, there is one, as I say, off the top of my head, I don't remember which website there was, but there was one that looked at all the cycles and they reported to the HFEA and patient demographics and history, and they came up with an algorithm that gave individualised pregnancy rates or potential pregnancy rates.
Okay. Another one that we have is, hi there, thank you so much for your time. It's our absolute pleasure to give you our time tonight. During the sedation, during IVF, does that mean that I am knocked out completely or just sedated to feel slightly relaxed and sleepy?
Okay.
Yeah,
I think that varies across clinics. Sometimes some clinics use anaesthetists and they use sedation that you're able to maintain your airway, but you're not aware of the procedure going on. Some clinics use a milder sedation where you can actually have a conversation with the clinicians around you. I think the important thing is that you need to be relaxed, you need to be pain-free, and because you need to be quite still. We are putting a needle into your ovaries, so we need to make sure that you're very comfortable, whether that's you're asleep or awake. So it does vary across clinics. I think in Glasgow, the vast majority of women are asleep. But there are some people who can still recall what was going on in theatre.
Are women prescribed hormones if certain levels are low?
Could you elaborate on that? I'm not quite sure what that means.
Yeah, because of course you have your down regulation, don't you? That gets rid of the body's sort of natural hormonal response, doesn't it, to create. Okay, we'll come back to that one. Is there much of a waiting time between the post-screening appointment and starting treatment?
There should, there may be 1 or 2 months. A treatment cycle tends to last about 8 weeks. We do see peaks and troughs in patients booking treatment cycles, and obviously for patient safety reasons, we at all clinics can only accommodate a maximum number of treatment cycles, and that's to make sure that, as I say, patient safety is first and foremost. Also to make sure that the embryology lab is able to cope with the volume of patients coming through. So there's multiple factors that affect the waiting times. At the very most, I would expect if you contacted the department to book a treatment cycle and you weren't able to, that they would provisionally book you with your next period. The only reasons that might not be possible is that the laboratory equipment needs serviced, and I know in Glasgow we have 2 times of the year where we close the lab and we don't do egg retrievals, and that is in the summer for the servicing of the equipment, and in the winter between Christmas and New Year for again some servicing, but also because it is extremely difficult to organise patients' egg retrievals within a few days of the week. So if we were to open at that time, I think patients' treatment would be compromised. So, as I say, in Glasgow we close the labs for 2 weeks for servicing and maintenance. The other part of the service still goes on. We are never completely closed. We are preparing patients for treatment. We're doing tubal patency testings. We've got a whole load of other clinics going on. So the clinic never actually closes apart from Christmas Day and Boxing Day and New Year's Day, and the 2nd of January we're open the rest of the year.
Okay, we've got a question here about funding. So if someone gets treatment and becomes pregnant but does not successfully give birth to a live baby, would the other treatment attempts still be available? E.g., 1 go of IVF used, 3 remaining would be on NHS?
Only if you continue to meet the eligibility criteria. If you don't have a live birth, you would then be able to access the remaining parts of your treatment cycle. So, for example, unfortunately, when some women have pregnancy tests, they do go on to miscarry. That would not be counted as a successful pregnancy, obviously, and you would be able to access, if clinically appropriate, your frozen embryo transfers or your 2nd or 3rd treatment cycle.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this one here, my partner has elevated levels of prolactin and we are planning to go to clinic in the next month. Do you think this will impact his fertility or his treatment?
I think from a male's perspective, we need to look at the semen analysis and see what the quality and quantity of sperm, if any, are available. I think the clinicians are experts in this field, so if they would have to review the prolactin levels, determine why that the prolactin levels were high, does he require any treatment, or does the semen sample that he produces, is that sufficient for treatment? Again, I think it's very difficult to generalise because we should be providing individualised patient care and individualised patient treatment regimes, and I think everybody should be assessed individually.
Okay, is IUI painful? I had the HSG test and it was very painful for me, and I'm worried that IUI will be the same.
I don't think it is. I think patients do describe the HSG or high COSE on occasions as being quite painful, or as you say, very painful. But the IUI we pass a very fine catheter through the cervix and inject the sperm, so there's no any real reason that it should be as painful as passing contrast medium through your fallopian tube. So I would hope not.
Okay. So how long does it take on average from the point of referral for IVF to complete the fast IVF treatment?
I think we would expect from, and well, this is specific again to Scotland, that you would have completed your first IVF treatment within at least a maximum of 1 year. So at the minute, the waiting times in Glasgow are 6 months from being placed on the waiting list to your first screening appointment. Probably takes 2 months to get your post-screen, and then your treatment regime is another 2 months. So you are looking at 10 months from being placed on the waiting list to having a pregnancy test.
Okay. I think we've pretty much covered most of the questions on there. But I would like to remind people about some of the support that Fertility Network UK provides. Don't forget, we've got our info line and our support line. Our support line actually has a trained fertility nurse that works on it, and she's able to give you any sort of answers that you have about any medical conditions that you want to discuss, etc. Also, we do run support groups, and if you look on our website, you'll see if there's one running in your area. If you have any difficulty with that, do email me, heather@fertilitynetworkscotland.org, and I can always pass you on to the right member of staff in the area in which you live. So just let me know where you live for that. And we do also have a glossary of terms which explain